Captain Sarah Chen stood at the Galactic Council Station's observation window and watched as another star system died. The readings were the same as those from the 4 to 7 systems that had fallen in the last 6 months. First, there was no more communication. Then, orbital monitoring showed that the planets were changing color from blue and green to sickly purple and gray. In the end, nothing. A total lack of sound. Ambassador Krell, a tall, crystalline being from the Verdant Collective, said, "They're calling it the cosmic rot." His voice carried the weight of the hopelessness that was common in these halls. Within weeks, every civilization that has come into contact with it has fallen. Nothing can stop it, not even our best scientists or most advanced military forces. Sarah turned away from the window and looked into Krell's rainbow-colored eyes. "Tell me everything. How does it work?" Sarah's translator said that Krell's form flickered with colors that looked like fear and giving up. "It's not just one thing. The cosmic rot is a whole biological system. It lets out engineered plagues that change DNA. It turns the air into a toxic soup that eats away at living tissue. It makes whole planets into places where nothing that evolved naturally can live." Another member of the council, a floating gas form called Whisper Through Clouds, was very upset. "We've tried everything. Energy shields, locks on DNA, and air purifiers. The rot changes faster than we can come up with ways to stop it. It learns from every defense we put up." Sarah felt a shiver run down her back. The Galactic Council had only been around for 5 years when Earth joined. People were still seen as the new kids on the block, a young species that barely qualified to join. Their technology was very basic compared to that of civilizations that had been exploring space for thousands of years. "How much time do we have?" Sarah asked in a low voice. "The way the rot is growing suggests it will reach space controlled by humans in 3 months, Krell said. "Maybe 4 if we're lucky." "I'm sorry, Sarah, but your people need to think about how to get out of here. Find a place to run while you still can." Sarah's jaw got tight. "People don't run. We need to learn more about this enemy. I want all of your information." Whisper Through Clouds got dimmer with sadness. "Brave words, young person. But being brave doesn't mean anything against the cosmic rot. 17 kinds of animals thought they couldn't be killed. All 17 are now gone. Their home worlds are graveyards that look like they belong to someone else." General Marcus Hayes was looking over the same information that Sarah was sending back from a secure military base in the Rocky Mountains. The best scientists, military strategists, and doctors in the world were all around him. Dr. Rebecca Torres, who is in charge of the CDC's Xenobiology Division, spoke first. "This is nothing like anything we've seen before. The rot's bioweapons work on a basic level. They don't just hurt the body, they change the structure of cells completely. Can we make vaccines?" General Hayes asked. "Yes, against normal pathogens. But this?" Dr. Torres shook her head. "The rot makes diseases that change in real time. As soon as you get used to one variant, it changes into something else. Traditional medicine won't work." Dr. James Park, an evolutionary biologist, leaned in. "General, I have something to show you." "Can I?" He pulled up a holographic display that showed how life on Earth has changed over time. "Check out this timeline. Ice ages that should have wiped out all large mammals. Volcanic winters that blocked out the sun for years. Pandemics that killed millions but never completely wiped us out. Humans have survived many events that could have wiped them out." "Doctor, get to the point," Hayes said. "The point is this: every other species in the galaxy evolved on worlds that were pretty stable. They had problems, but nothing like what happens on Earth. We've been through 1,000 different ways that the world has tried to kill us, and we're still here. We changed. We made it through. We did well." Dr. Amina Okafor, an expert in how the body works, said, "The general needs to know something else. Compared to other species, humans are biological freaks. We can eat a huge variety of foods, even things that would kill other animals. There are trillions of bacteria in our gut that help us digest almost anything. We can live in very hot and very cold places, like the Arctic and the desert. We heal from injuries that would kill other species with more refined biology." General Hayes looked back and forth between them. "Are you saying we have an edge?" Dr. Torres said carefully, "I'm suggesting that maybe, just maybe, our messy, chaotic biology might handle the rot differently than these other species. They're all specialized, improved, and polished. We are none of those things. We're adaptable chaos." 3 weeks later, the rot got to the outer human colonies faster than expected. First, the mining station on Kepler 442b stopped working. The station looked different when the rescue team got there. There was organic growth all over the metal walls, and it pulsed with purple light. The readings from the atmosphere showed poisonous chemicals that should have killed everyone right away. But they found Supervisor Tom Miller still alive inside. He had changed. His skin had a light gray tint, and his eyes had become strangely reflective. But he was awake, breathing, and able to think clearly. "Get him to the hospital right away," said Commander Lisa Washington from the rescue ship. "Full quarantine rules." Dr. Torres couldn't believe the readings on the medical ship Mercy. "This can't be done. His blood is full of the rot's germs. They should be killing his cells and changing his DNA so that it is no longer recognizable. But look, his immune system is fighting back. It's not just fighting, it's also taking in some of the foreign material and getting rid of the rest." Tom Miller sat up on the exam table and moved steadily, even though he had an infection that should have killed him. "Doc, I can't put it into words. When the rot came, everyone got sick. At first, I thought I was going to die too. Fever, chills, and pain that I'd never felt before. But then it went away. I began to feel better. The bad air that was supposed to kill us? I could breathe it in. I could function, but not comfortably." "How many other people lived?" Dr. Torres asked. "Out of 47 crew members? We made it through the first wave with 23 of us. We're all different now. Changed. But still alive." The news spread like wildfire through military channels. While other species were dying within hours of being exposed to rot, humans were changing. Not all of them, though. The death rate was still very high, about 50%. But 50% survival was a million times better than the 0% that all other species had to deal with. General Hayes called an emergency meeting of the most important leaders in the world. "Ladies and gentlemen, I think we've found something that the rot didn't expect. It is meant to overwhelm and destroy species with stable, predictable biology. But what about people? We don't know what will happen. Our bodies are used to fighting, changing, and adapting." President Angela Morrison, who was there through a secure hologram, asked the most important question: "Are you saying we can fight this thing?" Hayes said, "I'm suggesting that we might be the only species that can." Sarah Chen showed her findings to a group of people who were not sure what to make of them at the Galactic Council station. The holographic displays showed the rates of survival, the biological data, and the adaptation that had never happened before. The crystal form of Ambassador Krell darkened in disbelief. "Your data must be wrong. The rot has destroyed 17 civilizations. There are no survivors." Sarah kept saying, "The data is right. People are surviving first exposure at rates that shouldn't be possible. Our bodies are reacting to the rot's attacks in different ways. We're getting used to places that kill other species in a matter of minutes." A member of the Harmonious Collective, a species that had lost 3 colony worlds, spoke with a sense of urgency that was hard to hide. "If this is true, then all of humanity must fight back. There has to be a way to copy it so we can save the rest of our people." Dr. Torres, who was there remotely, shook her head sadly. "We're sorry, but we don't completely understand it yet. We can't move this vaccine or treatment to another place. It's a basic part of the history of human evolution. We lived on a planet for millions of years that always tried to kill us in new and creative ways. That can't be done again." The room where the council met was quiet. The effects were huge. The Galactic Council's newest and most primitive species might be the only one that can survive the galaxy's biggest threat ever. But staying alive was only the first step. Soon, people would find out that they weren't just surviving the cosmic rot. They were starting to change in ways that would shift the balance of power in the galaxy. Dr. Rebecca Torres had been awake for 36 hours straight, looking at the survivors from 7 different colonies that had rot. What she was seeing went against everything she had learned about medicine and biology in her career. "Look at this," she told her research team as she pulled up a cellular scan of Marine Sergeant David Park. "This man was exposed to rot strain Gamma 7 3 weeks ago, and it caused the internal organs of every Quellan we tested it on to break down. Yes, David got sick. 104-degree fever, trouble breathing, the whole 9 yards. But what now? His lungs have grown extra layers of membrane that filter out toxins. His liver is breaking down chemicals that should kill him. Not only is he immune, but has also changed." Dr. James Park, not related to the sergeant, looked at the metabolic readings with more and more excitement. "Rebecca, check the rates of energy conversion. He's getting nutrients from the rot's organic waste. His gut bacteria have taken in genetic material from the infection and are now breaking down chemicals that the rot made that weren't in nature before." Sergeant Park was showing these changes in person in the medical bay. He stood in a sealed room full of air samples from a rot-converted planet. The air had killed a research team from the Verdant Collective in less than 2 minutes. "How are you doing, Sergeant?" Dr. Torres asked through the intercom. David took a big breath. His eyes, which now had that strange reflective quality that all survivors developed, showed no signs of distress. "To be honest, Doc? I'm feeling great. Better than it was before the infection. The smell in here is strange, like burning plastic and rotting fruit, but I can breathe fine. I'm really getting hungry. My body wants to break down this air because it has some kind of organic compound in it." Dr. Torres wrote down a lot of notes quickly. He's not just getting by, he's getting energy from it. His body is treating the poisonous alien air like food. The rot had changed 60% of the surface of the colony world of New Vancouver. The 15,000 people who lived in the settlement had moved to sealed habitat domes, where they thought the worst would happen. But something strange was going on. Colony Administrator Jake Morrison stood at the edge of one of the open areas, where the rot's purple-gray growth had taken over the forest. He had gotten sick during the first outbreak and lived. He was different now, just like the others. "I can feel it," he told the research team that was recording what was going on. "Rot's growth isn't just random. It has patterns and rhythms. Like it's processing information or thinking." He moved forward, into the changed area. "Jake, don't," yelled Dr. Elena Vasquez, the head researcher. Jake, on the other hand, kept going. The rot's organic growth, which had violently attacked everyone who wasn't human who got too close, seemed to hesitate around him. He reached out and touched the purple biomass that was pulsing. "It's warm," he said, sounding amazed. "And I can feel chemical signals. It's talking to you in some way, but not with words. It's using molecular patterns. And my body is reacting to them. I think I'm beginning to get how it works." Back on Earth, the leaders of humanity were trying to figure out what it all meant. General Hayes showed the results to a group that included President Morrison, the Joint Chiefs, and representatives from all the major scientific institutions in a secure conference room. Dr. Torres said in a hologram, "What we're seeing isn't just immunity. It's evolution that happens quickly and on a scale that shouldn't be possible. The rot's bioweapons are made to change the genetic code. That rewriting is deadly in other species. But in people, our cells are fighting back, and sometimes they win. We are adding the genetic changes that survive to our genome. Are you saying that we are becoming part of the rot?" Admiral Chen asked, her voice full of worry. Dr. Torres said, "No. We're taking parts of it and making them our own. It's like this. Picture that every time you got sick, instead of just getting better, your body took the best parts of the virus and made you stronger. That's what is happening to people who survived rot." President Morrison leaned in. "How many people survived the first infection now?" "It's gone up to 68%, General Hayes said. "And getting worse with each generation that sees it. Sergeant Park and other first-wave survivors had a 50-50th chance. But what about people who have already been around humans who have adapted before they met the rot? More than 70% of them survive. It seems like we're passing on the change. How is that possible?" Dr. Richard Hall, the White House science advisor, asked. Dr. James Park took over the explanation. "People have always been good at sharing biological information. Not just through reproduction, but also through exposure, our microbiomes, and even physical contact. We are social beings on a cellular level. Sergeant Park shares bacteria that have adapted to the rot when he breathes the same air as other people. When survivors touch each other, they are passing on different types of microbes. We're building a network of immunity for everyone." Ambassador Krell was reading the latest reports from human space on the Galactic Council station. He felt both hopeful and scared. The rot had now hit 21 human colonies. A sad number of 70,000 people had died. But 90,000 people had lived, and those who had lived were learning skills that seemed impossible. Krell told the council, "They're doing well in areas where rot is present. People are building homes in places that should never have people living there. They're breathing in poisonous air, breaking down chemicals that would destroy our cells, and getting energy from the rot's waste products." Whisper through clouds pulsed with awe. How can one type of animal change so much? A member of the Logical Concordat, a type of machine intelligence, gave an analysis. "We have looked into the history of human evolution. Earth, their home planet, has seen 5 major extinction events and many smaller disasters. Ice ages, supervolcano eruptions, asteroid impacts, and big changes in the weather. Any one of these things would have destroyed most civilizations that were still growing. All of them, humans lived through. But how? Ambassador Krell asked. Adaptability, the Concordat representative went on. People never specialized. They never changed to fit perfectly into one ecological niche. Instead, they stayed generalists, which means they could eat almost anything, live almost anywhere, and survive in conditions that would kill more specialized species. Their bodies are a mess, inefficient, full of backup systems and extra pathways. This biological messiness, which we've always thought was primitive, is actually their biggest strength. Changes were happening faster and faster in human space. Commander Lisa Washington had been studying the rot-adapted humans for weeks. She had led the rescue mission to Kepler 442b. What she saw made her question everything she thought she knew about what people could and couldn't do. Watch this, Dr. Torres said as he showed Washington video from New Vancouver. Jake Morrison stood in complete darkness in a rot-infected area in the video. The cameras showed him moving with confidence, even though he couldn't see the obstacles he was going around. How is he doing that? Washington asked. Dr. Torres said, we think he's learned how to sense chemicals. The rot talks to each other through molecules in the air. Jake's brain has figured out how to read these signals. He isn't seeing in the usual way, instead, he is sensing chemical concentrations and making a mental map from them. It's a whole new sense that people have never had before. Are all survivors getting this? Yes, to some extent. And that's not all. Dr. Torres played another video, this one showing Sergeant Park lifting equipment that should have taken 3 men. Strength has gone up by about 40% from his baseline. His muscle tissue has changed shape and added support fibers that look like the rot structural proteins but are fully compatible with human biology. Washington was amazed. The rot is made to break down and eat other living things. Instead, we're using it and making it part of our lives. We're using their weapon against them. Exactly, Dr. Torres said. And I believe we are only starting to grasp the consequences. Dr. Elena Vasquez was doing the most difficult experiment yet on the research station that circles New Vancouver. She had put together a group of 50 rot survivors and was putting them in rot environments that were getting more and more concentrated. The results were amazing. Her assistant said, Group A has been in a rot atmosphere for 6 hours, 95% of the time. All vital signs are stable. Several subjects say they feel more energized than tired. Vasquez saw the survivors moving through what should have been a death chamber through the observation window. They were able to breathe easily and talk normally. Maya Patel, a former engineer, was actually eating something she had picked from the rot growth itself. What does it taste like, Maya? Vasquez asked through the intercom. Maya chewed with care. Sort of like a mushroom? Earthy. My body is telling me that it's good for me. It has a lot of proteins and a type of complex carbohydrate that my gut bacteria can break down. It sounds crazy, Doc, but I'm pretty sure I could live on only rot biomass if I had to. Vasquez wrote down a lot of information. The rot was made to be the ultimate consumer, breaking down all other living things. But people are becoming the best at adapting, using the rot's own biology as a resource. Vasquez sent her report to General Hayes that night with a simple conclusion: the rot isn't killing people. We're training it to live with us. Dr. Amina Okafor was making discoveries at the Deep Ocean Research Facility on Earth that would change everything. This was where the most sensitive experiments in human history took place. She had been looking into how rot adaptation works on a cellular level, trying to figure out how human cells were doing something that shouldn't be possible. I think I've found it, she told her team. Check out these junk DNA sequences. She pulled up genetic charts that showed the parts of human DNA that were thought to be useless because they didn't code for anything specific. Not at all junk. They're templates for adaptation, which means they have genetic flexibility that lets them change quickly over time. Dr. Tom Richardson, her co-worker, looked at the data. Are you saying that these sequences are like empty spaces that can be filled with new information? That's right. Genomes of other species in the galaxy are very stable and work well. Everything has a reason for being, and everything is as good as it can be. But people? We have all this extra genetic material that doesn't seem useful, until we need to change quickly. Then these sequences give evolution the building blocks it needs to happen quickly. So when the rot tries to change our DNA, it's not erasing something important, Okafor said in closing. It's filling in the blanks, and our cells are deciding which changes to keep and which to throw away. We're choosing and combining good mutations in real time across a whole population. Richardson sat back, feeling overwhelmed. We're not just getting by with the rot. We're using it to grow faster than nature should allow. And here's the scary part, Okafor said in a low voice. People have probably done this before. We survived every pandemic, every environmental disaster, and every time we almost went extinct by changing. We're really, really good at turning threats into chances for growth. 3 months into the rot crisis, people went from being possible victims to becoming something the galaxy had never seen before, a species that could not only survive the cosmic rot but also benefit from it. But as the survivors got stronger and more numerous, they started to understand something even deeper. They weren't just getting used to the rot. They were learning how to control it. The breakthrough came from a place no one expected. Before joining the Marines, Maria Santos was a private first class. She had survived rot exposure on the colony world of Esperanza, and like other survivors, she had gained strange powers. But Maria's changes were not the same. She told Dr. Torres to watch this during a routine exam. Maria put her hand on a sample of rot biomass that was in a sealed container. The purple-gray growth, which had been pulsing slowly, stopped all of a sudden. What did you do? Dr. Torres asked, looking at her tools in a hurry. Maria said, I'm not sure exactly. But I can feel the signals it's sending out. And I think I just sent signals back. For example, telling it to calm down. Dr. Torres called Dr. James Park and General Hayes right away. Maria was put in a level 4 containment facility within hours and was working with active rot samples under close supervision. Do it again, Dr. Park said. But this time, we're keeping an eye on every chemical change in the air. Maria paid attention to how the rot was growing. She had learned that she could feel the molecular patterns it used to talk to her if she focused hard enough. More importantly, she could make similar patterns with her own biochemistry. Her modified sweat glands were making chemicals that the rot reacted to. The biomass in front of her started to move away from the edges of its container. Wow, Dr. Park said. She's not just picking up on the rot signals, she's speaking its language. General Hayes understood right away what it meant. Is there anything else it can do? Make it grow in certain ways. Maria gave it a shot. At first, the rot growth didn't respond very quickly, but then it started to grow tendrils in the way she had imagined. It was rough, like a child's first words, but it was still talking. Hayes said, we need to test this with other survivors. Now. Researchers found that about 30% of the rot survivors had developed some level of biochemical communication ability over the next 2 weeks. Most of them could only tell that the rot was there and what it wanted. But only a few people, like Maria, could really change how it acted. The speakers were what they called this group. Jake Morrison had become the most advanced speaker known so far on New Vancouver. He was at the edge of the settlement, in what was called the transition zone. This was the area where human-controlled space met rot-infected land. He told Dr. Elena Vasquez and a group of researchers, I can feel the rot's collective presence. It's not smart in the way we think of smart. It's more like a huge immune system that works all over the body. It fights back against what it sees as threats and uses what it finds useful. Can you stop it from attacking? Vasquez wanted to know. Jake shut his eyes and thought about the chemical patterns he had learned to make. His body had learned to make dozens of chemicals that the rot used to send messages. I'm giving it my best shot. It's like trying to talk to an instinct instead of a person. But, yes. Look. The rot growth that had been slowly moving toward the settlement stopped. Then, unbelievably, it started to go away. It's working, Vasquez said in a voice full of wonder. You're really in charge of it. Not controlling, Jake said. More like giving advice. Showing it that we're not a threat and that we can work together. The rot is meant to eat and take in other living things. But we've added some parts of it. I think that messes up its basic programming. There were huge effects on the military. General Hayes put together a special group of speakers and taught them how to work with rot-infected areas instead of against them. They named it the Adaptation Corps. With his new strength and toughness, Sergeant David Park became the first field commander of the new unit. This is not like any war that humans have ever fought, he told his group of 23 modified people. We're not trying to kill the enemy. We want to change its direction, reprogram it, and make it work against itself. The rot had taken over 90% of the surface of Kepler 442b, so their first job was to take back the colony there. The team that had first found Tom Miller alive had to leave the planet, which was now under the control of the rot. They were going back now. Remember your training, Park told his team as their dropship flew through Kepler 442b's changed atmosphere. The rot will see that you are somewhat compatible, but it will still test you. Don't fight it, talk to it. Let it know that we are not prey. The team landed in what used to be the colony's main square. There was rot biomass all over the place, and it pulsed with that purple light. The air was full of poisonous chemicals that would have killed normal people in seconds. Maria Santos stepped forward, her biochemical sensing abilities fully engaged. I can feel it all around us. It knows we're there. Not hostile, but curious. Not yet. Get in touch, Park told them. Maria and two other speakers started the hard work of chemical communication. They let out chemicals that carried certain patterns, messages in the rot's molecular language, through their modified sweat glands and lungs. We are not enemies. We are a mix. We have parts of you in us. We want to live together. The rot reacted right away. Biomass tendrils reached out to the team, but instead of attacking, they seemed to be looking at things. Testing. Trying to figure out what these weird new creatures were. Maria said, it's confused. It can tell the difference between human DNA and its own DNA in us. It doesn't know how to put us in groups. Jake Morrison's voice came through the comm from New Vancouver, where he was keeping an eye on the mission. Tell it your evolution. The next step. Working together instead of using. Maria attempted to convert the idea into chemical signals. It was hard because the rot's language was only meant to say simple things like threat, food, incorporate, or destroy. It was hard to get across ideas that weren't concrete, like cooperation. But she kept going, and slowly, the rot's probing tendrils started to pull back. Not in retreat, but in acceptance? Maria said, I think it's working. The rot sees us as a successful mutation instead of an enemy. Like we're a part of it that got smarter over time. Over the next 6 hours, the team moved through the colony, setting up chemical communication systems with different parts of rot growth. Each zone had to be convinced on its own that humans were not a threat but rather a good fit. They had made a safe path through the rot-infected area by the end of the day. The biomass still covered everything, but it didn't attack people when it saw them. Even more amazing, some parts were starting to change shape in response to human direction. Check this out, said Private Chen, one of the engineers on the team. He had been working on a part of rot growth that was close to the old landing pad. I got it to make a strong base. It's changing its own biomass to make a stable surface. It's slow and the structure isn't very good, but it's responding to requests. Back on Earth, the success of the Kepler 442b mission caused a lot of arguments among the leaders of the world. President Morrison called an emergency meeting of his cabinet. She looked at the reports and said, let me make sure I understand this right. We're not killing the rot. We're talking to it. We're teaching it to work with us instead of against us. General Hayes nodded. Yes, Madam President. The rot isn't really smart, but it does respond. It's a biological system that can change and grow. We found out that we can change how that process works. And no one else cares about this. Patricia Williams, the Secretary of Defense, asked. We're messing with something that has wiped out 17 civilizations. Dr. Torres answered by hologram. Madam Secretary, those 17 civilizations tried to fight the rot with regular weapons and defenses. It changed to fit everything they threw at it. But we're not at war, we're coming together. The rot can't change to beat us because we're becoming part of its ecosystem. It's like telling your immune system to attack the cells in your own body. We're part rot now, so the rot is getting mixed signals. Ambassador Krell was giving the Galactic Council station information about what humans had found. Some people were horrified, others were cautiously hopeful, and a few were very skeptical. Ambassador Trill from the Harmonious Collective said, You're saying humans are domesticating the cosmic rot. Her tentacles were writhing with anger. You're treating the force that destroyed my homeworld and killed billions of my people like a pet. Sarah Chen, who had been working closely with the research teams, stood up to answer. Not a pet, Ambassador Trill. More like a tool. Or maybe a partner. The rot is a living thing. It reacts to chemicals, genetic compatibility, and the environment. People have figured out how to control all three. But how much? Krell wanted to know. Your people are changing. Changing into something else. Are they still people? Sarah looked him in the eye. Adaptation has always been a part of being human, and now they're more human than ever. We have made it through famines, floods, ice ages, and plagues. We've crossed oceans on rafts and climbed mountains that were so high they touched the sky. We've always adapted to new problems. This is just the most recent change. The logical Concordat representative took care of this information. Question: Is it possible for this adaptation to be shared with other species? Can you show us how to stay alive during the rot like you do? Dr. Torres shook her head sadly as she watched the council meeting. I'm sorry, but we don't agree. Millions of years of chaotic evolution on an unstable planet have made people adaptable. Your species evolved to be more efficient and better at what it does. You can't suddenly become a generalist, just like we can't suddenly become as energy efficient as your fusion-based biology. Then what's the point of you living if you can't help the rest of us? Trill yelled, her voice breaking with sadness. Sarah's answer was quiet but strong. It means that someone will live. And maybe, just maybe, we can figure out how to keep the rot from spreading to other systems. Not by destroying it, but by changing its direction. That last statement caused a stir in the council chamber. The effects were huge. The adaptation core was pushing the limits of what was possible on Kepler 442b. Sergeant Park's team had been working with the rot for 3 weeks, setting up more complicated ways to talk to each other and pushing the limits of their control. Park told General Hayes, "We've successfully directed rot growth to make basic structures. Platforms, barriers, and even rooms with walls. The rot biomass is very strong and can change to fit different situations. We can change its shape with the right chemical signals. Can you stop it from spreading?" Hayes wanted to know. "Can you hold it?" "We think so. Maria has been working on that in particular." Park pointed to Santos, who then stepped forward. Maria said, "The rot spreads because it is always looking for new resources. But we've found that it will stop growing if it gets signals that there are enough resources in its current area. Instead of always consuming outward, we've been teaching it to recycle its own biomass to make closed-loop systems." Hayes leaned in closely. "You mean you can put a fence around it?" "Yes, in a way. We are making rot zones that are stable and can take care of themselves. They don't need to grow because they're not using up their resources. It's like trying to teach a forest to stay in balance instead of trying to grow everything." Jake Morrison was taking this even further on New Vancouver. He had worked with the rot for so long that he almost instinctively knew how it acted. He could feel its chemical moods, guess how it would grow, and change its development with more and more accuracy. "Come see this," he told Dr. Vasquez. He took her to a part of the forest where the rot had been especially bad, eating the native plants and turning them into purple-gray biomass. The area looked different now, though. The rot was still there, but it had been shaped, organized, and even grown. It grew in neat sections, with clear paths between them. In some places, it looked like it was helping earth plants grow instead of eating them. "Is this what I think it is?" Vasquez asked in shock. Jake nodded. "A mixed ecosystem. The rot gives the plants structural support and processes some nutrients that the plants on Earth can't handle in this soil. The rot can use the energy from photosynthesis that the plants make. They are working together. That shouldn't be able to happen. The rot is meant to eat up all other living things. It's meant to include and adapt," Jake said. "We're just showing it a new way to change that doesn't involve eating it, but living with it." This discovery quickly spread its effects through human space and beyond. It changed everything if the rot could learn to live with others instead of eating them. But as people were about to find out, teaching the rot new behaviors was just the start. What really mattered was what happened when the rot started to teach back. The big change happened on a cold morning on the planet Arcturus 9, where the rot had taken over a research base 3 months before. Dr. Marcus Reeves, a xenobiologist who had survived the first infection, made a discovery that would change the course of the war. Reeves told General Hayes over the secure channel, "General, you need to see this right away. The rot isn't just reacting to us anymore. It's expecting." Hayes and Dr. Torres, along with a security detail, arrived at Arcturus 9 within 18 hours. What they found made them question everything they thought they knew about the cosmic rot. Reeves took them to what used to be the main lab at the research station. Rot biomass covered the whole room, but it had arranged itself in ways that looked like it was trying to do something. Parts of the growth had made structures that looked like workstations, storage areas, and even what looked like display screens made of thin, see-through biomass. Hayes said, "Show me." Reeves walked up to one of the biomass formations. "Watch." He put his hand on the surface and concentrated, sending chemical signals through his changed biochemistry. The rot did what he told it to do, but not just that. It seemed to predict what he was going to ask for next, reshaping itself before he even finished communicating the request. "It's learning from us," Dr. Torres said. "It's not just following orders, it's also learning how we work and changing how it works to make it easier for us." "There's more," Reeves said in a serious tone. He took them to another area where samples of rot biomass were stored in separate containers. These are samples from 17 different infected worlds. Watch what happens when I add a sample from Arcturus 9. He carefully added a small piece of the local rot growth to a sample from a planet that is 3 light-years away. The two parts of biomass touched, and right away they started to share information. They could see it happening at the molecular level on the monitors, genes moving around, chemical signals lining up, and behavior patterns being copied and added to. Hayes said in a low voice, "Dear God. All the rot in the galaxy is connected in some way, and they share what they learn." "Not quite connected in real time," Reeves said. "But information does get passed on, probably when infected ships move between systems or spores float through space. Every rot zone is learning from the experiences of every other rot zone. And now, they're all learning about us." The effects were huge and could have been very bad. How would every rot zone in the galaxy react if it learned that humans could change and control how it acted? The answer came sooner than anyone thought it would. The rot had been quiet for weeks on the outer colony of Pershing's world. It wasn't spreading aggressively like it did on other planets. The colonists had been cautiously hopeful, thinking that this strain might be weaker or less active. They were wrong. "It was waiting," said Commander Rachel Anderson, the military liaison for the colony. "It was watching us the whole time, learning our habits, biology, and routines. Then it hit." But the rot's attack was different from its attacks on other species in the past. It didn't try to take over and eat. Instead, it went after specific targets in a planned way. "It went after our power generation first," Anderson said. "Wrapped biomass around the fusion reactors, but instead of destroying them, it tried to incorporate them. It was trying to combine our technology with its own." Dr. Torres became more and more worried as he listened to the report. The rot is changing its plan. It's not just a biological weapon anymore, it's becoming a hybrid system that uses both biology and technology. "And it learned that by watching us," General Hayes said with a frown. "We've been teaching the rot that working together and getting along are better than just consuming. Now it's putting those lessons into practice, but not always in ways we can control." The problem at Pershing's world got worse very quickly. The rot had successfully connected to a number of power systems and was using the energy to grow and change quickly. But it wasn't going after the colonists directly. It looked like it was trying to make a shared space, a hybrid space where rot biomass and human infrastructure could live together. Dr. James Park, who is studying the data from Pershing's world, said, "It's making the same mistake we did at first. It thinks that just because we can live with it, we want to be a part of its ecosystem completely. It doesn't get that we need to keep our own identity." Hayes asked, "Can we tell it that?" "Maria's team is working on it," Park said. "But it's hard. The idea of working together while keeping your distance is hard to understand. The rot's whole strategy for evolution is based on incorporation and assimilation. We're asking it to do something that goes against its nature." Maria Santos and her speaker team were trying to communicate in the most difficult way yet on Pershing's world. They were at the edge of the colony's main area, where rot biomass had connected to the power grid and was slowly spreading through the buildings. Maria told her team, "We need to set clear limits. The rot needs to know that some places are ours, some are theirs, and some can be shared. But it has to respect the lines." She sent out a complicated pattern of chemical signals that were more advanced than anything she'd tried before. The main point of the message was that we are separate but connected. Like organs in a body, each one is different, important, and gives the other space. At first, the rot didn't know what to do. Its whole biological programming was about breaking down barriers and taking in anything that was useful. It didn't understand the idea of working together while staying apart. But over time, it started to get the hang of it. The biomass that had been spreading quickly through the power systems began to pull back. Not all the way, but enough to make clear borders. It kept its connections to the energy sources but stopped trying to take over the whole system. "It's working," Maria said, her voice full of careful relief. "The rot is learning how to set limits. It's making a partnership ecosystem instead of a consumption ecosystem." The success at Pershing's world gave people a model for their new plan. They didn't want to completely destroy or take over the rot. They were showing it a new way to live that was based on symbiosis instead of parasitism. But the other civilizations in the galaxy were watching these events with a mix of hope and fear. An emergency meeting was called on the Galactic Council station to talk about how humans are having more and more of an impact on the cosmic rot. Ambassador Trill from the Harmonious Collective was the first to speak. Her tentacles were writhing with barely controlled emotion. "Ambassador Chen, you're playing with fire. You're not just surviving the rot, you're changing it and teaching it new behaviors. What if you lose control? What if it learns too much from you and becomes even more dangerous? Sarah Chen got what they were worried about. Ambassador, I won't pretend there's no risk. But think about the other option. Before people got involved, the rot was an unstoppable force of consumption. 17 civilizations fell, with no survivors. Now, we have human colonies living next to rot zones. We have stable borders and everyone can survive. Yes, the rot is changing, but it's changing in ways that make it easier for everyone to survive. The gas-form delegate, whisper through clouds, thought about it and pulsed. The human approach makes sense. They are using the rot's own ability to change against it. Instead of fighting its nature, they are changing it. But for what purpose? Krell asked. Ambassador Chen, what is your ultimate goal? To tame the rot? To make it your own weapon? To turn it into a weapon of your own? Sarah took a big breath. Our goal is survival, for us and for you. We're showing that the rot doesn't have to mean death. Life can continue, and even thrive, in areas with rot. Yes, we're learning how to change and control rot behavior, but we're not doing this to gain power over other species. We're doing it because it's the only way any of us can survive. The logical Concordat representative took care of this. Proposal: humans should share their ways of communicating and influencing rot with other council species. This will lower the risk of humans having a monopoly on anti-rot power. Dr. Torres, who was watching the session from a distance, shook her head. We've tried to teach other species how to communicate chemically, but it doesn't work. Only humans have the biological changes that let them make and sense the rot's molecular signals. Your bodies don't have the right amount of flexibility. Then we have to rely on people's goodwill, Krell said angrily. Whether or not your species helps us will determine our survival. Sarah looked him in the eye. Yes. Since we joined the galactic community, humanity has relied on the goodwill of council species for technology, resources, and knowledge. We're all interdependent, Ambassador Krell. That's what civilization means. The adaptation core was growing quickly in human space. There were now more than 2,000 speakers, up from 23. Every week, more people learned how to adapt. They were sent to 57 colonies and research stations, where they set up communication systems with rot zones and taught the biomass new ways to act. Sergeant David Park was in charge of a force that had never been seen before in military history. His soldiers weren't fighters in the usual sense. They were translators, negotiators, and engineers of ecosystems. Instead of fighting the rot, they worked with it to shape its growth and change its direction. Park told his team during a meeting, "We're not soldiers anymore. We're more like gardeners. We're taking care of the rot, trimming it, and guiding its growth into patterns that help people live instead of threatening them." Private Chen had a worry. Sergeant, what will happen when the rot gets smart enough to know it doesn't need us? Right now, it's working with us because it's confused and we're somewhat compatible. But it's learning quickly. It might figure out that it's stronger than us and doesn't need to share space. Park nodded sadly. That's what General Hayes thinks about at night. We're in a race to teach the rot cooperation and limits faster than it can learn real strategic intelligence. If we win, we create a stable balance. If we lose... He didn't have to finish the sentence. Everyone knew what failure meant. Jake Morrison had gone further than any other speaker in his integration with the rot on New Vancouver. He spent 18 hours a day in areas infected with rot. His biochemistry had changed so much that he could live in places that would kill other speakers in minutes. Jake, you need to take breaks, Dr. Vasquez told him during one of his rare visits to the human settlement. We're worried about long-term effects because your body is changing faster than we can keep track of. In the dim light, Jake's eyes glowed a faint purple. Elena, I'm fine. In fact, I'm better than fine. I can feel the whole rot ecosystem on this planet. I know its rhythms, needs, and responses. And it knows me. We're building a real partnership here. Vasquez said, that's what worries us. You're turning into more rot than a person. I'm becoming both, Jake said softly. Isn't that the point? The rot tried to eat humanity and failed. Now we're both changing to fit each other, making something new that has the best of both. Or the worst of both, Vasquez said under his breath. But the results of Jake's experiments were clear. The rot zone in New Vancouver was now a model of how to live together peacefully. There were human settlements next to rot biomass, each with its own area but sharing resources in a way that worked well. Jake was teaching the biomass to make oxygen as a byproduct of its metabolism, which was making the air quality in rot zones better. Some parts were even being farmed to grow fruiting bodies that people could safely eat. Jake told General Hayes during a video call, "We're making a hybrid ecosystem. The rot gives structural support, processes the atmosphere, and makes raw materials. Humans give direction, make plans, and integrate technology. Together, we're more efficient than either of us could be alone." Hayes looked at the reports with some respect. "You're basically terraforming with the rot instead of against it." "Exactly. Why fight against a biological system that is so good at changing environments? We should work with it instead. The rot can do things that technology alone can't." This way of thinking started to spread through human space. Colony after colony said that they were able to successfully join local rot zones. The number of people who died from rot exposure went down from 50% to 20%, then to 10%. Adapted humans were not only living, but also thriving in places that would have killed them in an instant just a few months earlier. And the rot was changing too. In space that people controlled, rot biomass was changing its behavior, structures, and abilities, all because of how it interacted with people. It was still the cosmic rot, and it could still be deadly if it felt threatened, but it was also changing into something else. Something that had never been in the galaxy before. President Morrison made a historic broadcast from Earth to the whole world and the galaxy. "We are at a crossroads," she said, and her image was sent to every Galactic Council member world and across human space. "The cosmic rot came to our galaxy to destroy it. It wiped out 17 civilizations and threatened to wipe out all life. But humanity has shown something amazing, that adaptability is stronger than any weapon and that working together can beat even the most hostile forces. We will not let the rot kill us. But we won't destroy it either. We are doing what people have always done best, adapting, learning, and teaching. We are changing a weapon into a tool and a threat into an opportunity. We offer our partnership and protection to the other species of the Galactic Council. Humanity will work to contain and redirect the rot, creating safe zones where all species can live. All we ask is that you trust us, work with us, and know that the answer to this crisis is not to destroy the rot, but to change how we relate to it. The time of the cosmic rot as an unstoppable terror is coming to an end. The time has come for people to be the best adapters in the galaxy." People across the galaxy had different reactions to the speech. But one thing was becoming clear: humanity had gone from being a potential victim to a potential savior, and the balance of power in the galaxy was changing in ways no one could have predicted. But soon, people would find out that their biggest problem wasn't controlling the rot, it was controlling what they were becoming. 6 months after the first rot exposure, people looked completely different. Not in spirit, but in shape. Dr. Rebecca Torres stood in her lab, looking over genetic profiles of adapted humans. She felt a chill of wonder and fear at what she was seeing. "We're diverging," she told Dr. James Park as she pulled up comparison charts. "Look at these genetic markers. 6 months ago, all humans were 99.9% genetically similar. Now, adapted humans are showing differences between populations based on the strain of rot they've been exposed to and the environments they've adapted to." Park looked at the data with a worried look on his face. "We're evolving. Right now, humans on Kepler 442b are adapting in ways that are different from humans on New Vancouver or Arcturus 9. If this keeps up, they might become genetically different subspecies in a generation or two." "Is that bad?" Dr. Amina Okafor asked, joining the conversation. "Humanity has always been different. This could just be the next step in our evolution." "Or maybe," Torres said softly, "we're giving up what makes us human to stay alive. Where do we draw the line? At what point do we stop being Homo sapiens and become something else entirely?" People were asking the question in labs, living rooms, military headquarters, and philosophical debates all over the world. The adapted humans, who now number more than 3 million, were still human in terms of their culture and consciousness. But their bodies were getting more and more strange. Maria Santos, a private, looked in the mirror in her room at the research station and hardly recognized the woman looking back at her. In some lights, her skin had a faint iridescent quality, with colors that changed slightly. Her eyes, which used to be a deep brown, now had that reflective purple sheen that all speakers got. She could feel the extra layers of membranes in her lungs, the stronger chemical receptors in her nasal passages, and the changed proteins in her muscle tissue when she took deep breaths. She said softly to her reflection, "I'm still me. Not the same, but still me." Her roommate, Lieutenant Sarah Kim, put a hand on her shoulder to show her support. Kim was unchanged because she had never been exposed to the rot. "Maria, you're still you. The best damn speaker in the Corps and my friend. that hasn't changed. But the gap between modified and unmodified humans was getting bigger. It wasn't just physical, it was also mental. Adapted humans could sense things that unmodified humans couldn't, live in places that would kill their unmodified relatives right away, and talk to the rot in ways that seemed almost telepathic. To deal with the stress, Sergeant David Park called a meeting of the senior officers of the Adaptation Corps. "Listen up," he said to the group of people who had been modified and those who had not. "I'm hearing things. Adapted personnel feel alone. Unmodified personnel feel like they don't belong or aren't good enough. This stops now. We're all human. The adaptations some of us have made don't change that basic truth. We're still one species, one military, and one civilization." "With all due respect, Sergeant," said Corporal Mike Johnson, a heavily modified speaker, "that's easy to say but hard to live. I can survive in a vacuum for 90 seconds now. I can break down chemicals that would dissolve Lieutenant Kim's tissues. I can sense rot biorhythms from kilometers away. How can we be the same species when we have such different abilities?" Park's answer was sharp. "Being human isn't about what your body can do, it's about how you choose to use those abilities. Are you using your adaptations to help people? To protect the weak? To build instead of destroy? Then you're human, Johnson. The day you forget that is the day you become something else." The speech helped, but it didn't get rid of the underlying problems. Society was breaking apart along biological lines all over human space. Some colonies were fully adapted, and their people could live directly with rot biomass. Others stayed the same, but they were protected by their adapted neighbors and became more and more reliant on them to stay alive in a galaxy affected by rot. President Morrison called an ethics committee to deal with the crisis on Earth. Religious leaders, philosophers, scientists, and people from both modified and unmodified communities came together to answer the most important question: what does it mean to be human in a time of radical biological change? Morrison opened the conference by saying, "The question before us is not whether we should adapt. That ship has sailed. Millions of our people have already been changed by the rot. The question is, how do we keep our shared humanity and identity when our bodies are changing so much?" The first person to speak was Rabbi David Goldstein. "Throughout history, what makes us human is not our bodies, but our values, our consciousness, and the moral choices we make. A person in a wheelchair is just as human as an Olympic athlete. A person with a prosthetic limb is just as human as a person with biological limbs. The changes we're seeing now are more extreme, but the principle is still the same." But Bishop Maria Contreras made a worrying point. "Rabbi, those are changes on the outside. What we're talking about here is a fundamental change in genetics. When humans can't breed with their unmodified relatives anymore and can live in places that would kill baseline humans, are we still talking about the same species?" A bioethicist named Dr. Chen Wei had a different point of view. "Species boundaries are more flexible than we used to think. For example, humans and Neanderthals were able to have children together. Modern humans have DNA from many different species. Maybe what we're seeing isn't the end of humanity but its diversification, like a tree growing many branches, all of which are still part of the same organism." There was no clear agreement after days of arguing. But one thing kept coming up: people had to choose to be united on purpose or risk splitting into groups of post-humans who were competing with each other. Jake Morrison was the most extreme example of adaptation on New Vancouver. He had been with the rot for so long that his body had changed more than any other humans. His skin had compounds that could photosynthesize, which meant he could get energy from sunlight. His nervous system had taken in rot neural tissue, which gave him an unprecedented understanding of how living things work. He could live for hours in a vacuum by going into hibernation, which slowed his metabolism to almost a standstill. Dr. Vasquez did regular checkups and wrote down how he was changing out of a mix of scientific interest and personal worry. "Jake, your genome is now only 97.3% the same as baseline human DNA, she told him during one session. "You've crossed the line. In a way, you're now a different subspecies." Jake looked at his hands. At first, they looked normal, but in certain lights, you could see the subtle network of rot hybrid tissue under the skin. "Should we call it Homo adapticus or Homo symbioticus?" "Jake, this isn't a joke. You can't have kids with a human who hasn't been changed. The genetic differences are too big." "But I could have kids with another adapted human," Jake said. "And isn't that how speciation has always worked? Different environmental pressures cause populations to split up." Vasquez sat down with a thud. "You're right, of course. But it's happening so quickly. Normally, speciation takes hundreds of thousands of years. We're seeing it happen in months. Jake's face relaxed. Elena, I know this is scary. But look at what we've done. 6 months ago, the rot was a threat to all life. Now we're not just surviving, we're thriving. We've made hybrid ecosystems where human civilization and rot biomass can live together. We've stopped the rot from spreading across multiple star systems. We've saved lives, Elena. Billions of lives. At what cost? Vasquez asked in a low voice. By changing, Jake said. But people have always changed. We changed when we left the trees, when we learned how to farm, and when we left Earth. This is just the next change. But not everyone agreed with that. There was a movement among unmodified people who called themselves the preservationists. They said that to keep the species' original form, humans needed to keep a population of genetically pure people who had never been exposed to rot. Senator Robert Mitchell, their spokesperson, gave passionate speeches about how important it is to protect living things. We honor the sacrifices of our adapted brothers and sisters, he said at a rally on Earth. They saved us from the rot's destruction. But we can't let the whole human race change. We need genetic preserves, protected populations that keep our original genome. If we don't, we could lose what it means to be human forever. The adapted community was angry and hurt. Maria Santos's interview spread like wildfire across all of human space. Senator Mitchell talks about genetic purity and preserving original humanity, she said, her purple-tinted eyes flashing with emotion. But there is no such thing as original humanity. We've been changing since the first day life began on Earth. Every generation is different from the last. Every population has its own genetic differences. What the preservationists want isn't preservation, it's stagnation. And in a galaxy full of threats like the cosmic rot, stagnation means death. At the worst possible time, the debate could have split humanity. Because they were about to find out that the rot was also at a very important point in its own evolution. In the galaxy's deep rot space, where the biomass had completely taken over, something new was starting to grow. The rot had taken genetic material from 17 dead civilizations and was now processing biological data from thousands of humans who had adapted. It was learning not only how to live with smart people, but also how to use smart people. The first sign came from a monitoring station in deep space that is on the edge of space that humans control. Lieutenant Commander James Foster was looking over his normal scans when he saw something that shouldn't have been there. Commander Anderson, you need to see this, he yelled to his boss. Commander Rachel Anderson came to the sensor station with him. What am I looking at? Rot biomass, but not like any rot we've seen before. It's organized. It's making structures that look like ships, and they're moving with a purpose, not just drifting. Anderson's blood ran cold. Now, get General Hayes on the phone. Reports were coming in from several observation posts within hours. The rot was getting worse. Not only growing and eating, but also building complicated structures out of its own biomass. Ships, stations, and communication arrays are all alive, all biological, and all moving together for a reason. It's learned from us, Dr. Torres said when she saw the numbers. We taught it how to work together, how to plan ahead, and how to be smart. Now it's getting smarter on its own. General Hayes called an emergency meeting of the best military and scientific leaders in the world. We need to know if this is a threat. Is the rot becoming a hostile intelligence, or is it just copying what it sees us do? Jake Morrison, who was there via holographic link from New Vancouver, had the answer. I've talked to the rot structures. It's hard to explain, but they're not hostile. They're curious. The rot has figured out that working with humans is better than eating them. Now it's trying to build its own tools and infrastructure to make that cooperation easier. Admiral Chen said, or it's making weapons. Jake said, the rot wouldn't need to build ships if it wanted to make weapons. It's a biological system that can turn whole planets into weapons. No, this is different. It's trying to talk to us in a way that we can understand and use. An urgent message from the Galactic Council stopped the debate. The screen showed Ambassador Krell's face, which was bright with barely contained panic. General Hayes, Ambassador Chen, we have a problem. 3 rot-built ships have entered Council space. They aren't attacking, but they are getting closer to the Council station. We need to know if these ships are under human control. Sarah Chen's heart raced. No, Ambassador. These are self-driving rot constructs. But we don't think they're dangerous. Krell's voice got louder. You don't believe? The force that destroyed 17 civilizations has built ships and is coming toward our headquarters, and you don't believe they're hostile. Please give us time to talk, Sarah said. We can talk to the rot. Let's see what it wants. The council didn't want to agree, but they didn't have any other choice. 3 rot vessels, which were huge structures made of biomass shaped into ships, organisms, and ecosystems, floated in space 1,000,000 kilometers from the council station. Jake Morrison, Maria Santos, and a group of speakers traveled to stop them. This was the most important communication session in the history of humans, and maybe even in the history of the entire galaxy. Maria could feel the chemical signals coming from the rot ships even though they were still on their ship. They're sending out ideas, not words. Captain Williams, who was in charge of the human ship, asked, "What are they saying?" Maria closed her eyes and tried to make sense of the complicated molecular patterns. They're talking about partnership, integration, and evolution. They're saying they want to merge civilizations and make something new that mixes biological and technological, rot and human, chaos and order. Williams said, "That's crazy. We can't join forces with the rot. It's done too much damage and killed too many." But Jake was getting the same signals, and he understood them in a more complex way. They're not asking us to become rot. They're asking us to work together to make something. They've learned from 17 civilizations, taken in their knowledge and skills, and learned from humans that working together is better than consuming. Now they want to work together on a galactic scale. Williams asked, "What if we say no?" The chemical signals changed, and both Maria and Jake could tell. "Then they'll wait," Jake said. "They'll keep changing, learning, and growing. Eventually, they'll find other species that are willing to work with them. Or they'll become smart enough that the partnership won't matter anymore." Sarah Chen, who was watching from the council station, made a choice that would change the course of history in the galaxy. "Say we'll think about their offer, but we have rules, limits, and conditions. If they want to be partners, they need to know that being partners means respecting each other's independence." The rot vessels didn't send chemical signals, they acted instead. They started to change shape, building structures that looked like meeting rooms, communication centers, and diplomatic facilities. These structures were all made from living biomass but were made to fit humanoid shapes. Maria breathed, "They're building an embassy. A place where we can meet and talk things over on equal ground." As the first diplomatic mission got ready to enter the building built by the rot, humanity was at a crossroads. They had lived through the cosmic rot, learned how to deal with it, and even learned how to change it. Now they might have to work with it. But the question still stood. Were they still human after changing to survive, adapting so much, and joining forces with their former enemy? They would find out in the last chapters of this transformation that the answer was both simpler and more complicated than anyone thought. The inside of the embassy built by rot was unlike anything else in the world. The walls were alive, pulsing softly with bioluminescent light that changed colors that no living thing on Earth could make. The air was breathable because the rot had learned how to make a mix of oxygen and nitrogen that was safe for people to breathe. However, it smelled strange, like both chemicals and living things. Maria Santos was in charge of the diplomatic team, which also included Jake Morrison, Ambassador Sarah Chen, and Dr. Rebecca Torres. Every step into the building felt big and important. The whole galaxy watched through video feeds that were sent out. "Stay alert," Sarah said, but her voice sounded more curious than scared. "We're the first diplomatic mission to an alien intelligence that used to be our enemy." Jake put his hand on the wall and felt the chemical patterns moving through the rot structure. He said, "It's nervous, in shock. The rot is actually worried about this meeting. It wants it to work, but it doesn't really get how diplomacy works." They went into a central room where the rot had built something that looked like a conference table. It was a flat surface made of hardened biomass with structures around it that could be used as chairs. But the most interesting thing was the mass of rot tissue that was floating in the middle of the room. It looked almost like a person. It wasn't trying to look exactly like a person, it was trying to make a shape that people could relate to, as a way of being nice. The construct spoke not with sound but with chemical signals that the speakers could pick up on and translate. Maria translated for the other members of the team. "The rot says it has learned the cost of consumption. It absorbed 17 civilizations and gained their knowledge, but by destroying them, it lost the chance to keep learning. It consumed the teachers along with the lessons." The rot construct moved, and new signals appeared. Jake kept translating. When it came across people, it tried the same thing, but people didn't die. Instead, they changed, and in doing so, they taught the rot something new, that working together can be better than eating. Dr. Torres leaned forward, her scientific mind working. "Ask it why it builds these things now. Why make ships and embassies when it could just stay a biomass? Maria sent the question through chemical signals. The Rot's response was complicated and took a few minutes to fully understand. Maria finally translated, "It's trying to meet us halfway." The Rot knows that people use technology, buildings, and organized space to think and talk. It's making these things not because it needs them, but because we do. It's changing its shape to make it easier for us to talk to it. Sarah Chen knew how important it was because of her training as a diplomat. It's making concessions. Compromising. That's the first rule of successful negotiation. She spoke directly to the Rot construct, but she knew Maria would have to turn her words into chemical signals. "We appreciate your efforts to make things easier for us. But we need to set some limits. We need clear rules about where Rot territory ends and human territory begins." The construct's answer came right away and was surprisingly clear. It sent a message of shared space instead of divided territory through the speakers. It showed them, using chemical visualizations that both Jake and Maria could see, a picture of hybrid zones where Rot biomass and human infrastructure live together, each respecting the other's needs and sharing resources. "It's suggesting a new way for people to live together," Jake said in awe. "Not separation, not consumption, but integration. Picture cities where Rot biomass takes care of processing the air and recycling waste, while people take care of technology and making tough decisions. Each doing what they do best, without trying to control the other." "That sounds like the Rot is asking us to rely on it, which is dangerous," Sarah said carefully. Maria shook her head. "No, it's offering mutual dependence. The Rot has learned that it can benefit from human intelligence and creativity. It's saying that together, we're better than either of us alone." Dr. Torres was already thinking about what this meant for biology. "We're not just talking about diplomatic relations if we agree to this. We're talking about building a whole new kind of civilization. One that is partly biological, partly technological, partly human, and partly Rot." Jake asked quietly, "Is that really so different from what we've become?" He pointed to himself, Maria, and the millions of people who had changed. "We're already hybrids. Our bodies have Rot genetics in them, and our cities have Rot biomass in them. The only question is whether we make this relationship official or keep acting like we're different species." General Hayes sent an urgent message that stopped the conversation. "We have a problem. A group of preservationists has taken over 3 military ships. They want us to stop talking and destroy the Rot embassy, which they call collaboration with the enemy." Sarah's jaw tightened. "Tell them that if they attack this embassy, they will be starting a war against the future of humanity. We're making history here." Hayes said with a frown, "They don't see it that way. They think that adapted humans are traitors and that this negotiation is giving up. Senator Mitchell is telling anyone who will listen that military action is needed to preserve true humanity." Jake got very angry. True humanity? What does that even mean? Being able to live in only one type of environment? Not being able to change when faced with new problems? That's not humanity, that's extinction waiting to happen. But Sarah got why the preservationists were scared. They're scared of change. They see their kids, their neighbors, and their species changing into something new, and they don't know if there's a place for them in this new world. Maria thought of something. "Then we show them. We show that adapted and unmodified humans can live together, just like humans and Rot can. We need to show that adaptation doesn't mean replacement." The Rot construct had been watching this conversation, and through the speakers, it made an unexpected offer. It could show the unmodified humans exactly what the partnership would look like. Not by talking or sending chemical signals, but by having direct experience. Maria translated, "It's offering to make a demonstration zone. A place where regular people can see how Rot-human cooperation works without putting themselves in danger. A model city that shows what could happen." Dr. Torres wasn't sure. How can it do that without putting people who haven't been changed at risk of getting sick? The Rot's answer was elegant. It would make a completely closed-off space where no unwanted genetic transfer could happen. Unmodified humans could see, talk to, and even work with adapted humans and Rot biomass, but they would be completely safe from biological harm. It was possible, but it would take weeks to grow the right structures. Jake said, "It's bending over backward to please the preservationists. It's giving proof without taking a risk. How many diplomatic talks in the past have had that kind of guarantee?" Sarah made a choice. "Tell the Rot that we accept the offer. And General Hayes, tell the preservationist faction that they should at least see what our future looks like before they decide to destroy it." Building the demonstration zone turned into a big deal across the galaxy. On a planet called New Harmony, the Rot started building things that it had never built before. They built a city with the help of human architects and Rot bioengineers, who were adapted humans who could control the growth of large amounts of Rot. The city center was a great example of hybrid design. The base of the infrastructure was Rot biomass, which made buildings that cleaned the air, reused all waste, and made energy from sunlight and chemicals in the air. But these buildings were made to fit people's needs and tastes. They had windows, doors, rooms, and hallways, all made from biomass but made to be comfortable for people. The Rot infrastructure worked perfectly with human technology. Power systems, communication networks, and data storage are all better because of Rot biology, not worse. The Rot took care of the simple metabolic processes, while human technology took care of the more complicated ones that needed to be done with precision. It's beautiful, Dr. Vasquez said as he walked around the city a month after it was built. I never thought Rot biomass could be shaped like this. It looks like coral, but it has a purpose. Jake, who had a big part in planning the city, pointed to a neighborhood of homes. Come see the living spaces. I think this is what will really convince people. The apartments were beautiful. Walls of Rot biomass that kept the temperature and humidity just right, filtered the air, and even changed the lighting based on the body's natural rhythms. But they looked like houses, not places from another world. Furniture made from shaped biomass but made to be comfortable for people. Rot tissue could break down and process raw materials into edible compounds in the kitchen. However, it was also possible to cook with food that had been brought in. Jake said, the beauty of it is that unmodified humans can live here without any biological changes. They don't have to worry about getting sick from Rot strains. They are just taking advantage of Rot's metabolic abilities in a completely safe way. The first group of preservationists was invited to visit, and that was the test. Senator Mitchell was in charge of a group of 50 unmodified people, all of whom were wearing environmental suits even though they were told it was safe. Take off the suits, Maria said softly. You're completely safe. The Rot in this city has been specifically grown to not be contagious. It can't pass on its genes to you unless you want to be adapted, which is a whole other process. The preservationists took off their suits slowly and with a lot of reluctance. They took in the air, which was clean, fresh, and perfect. They ran their hands over the walls, which were warm and a little givey but not slimy or scary. As they walked around the city, their faces changed from scared to curious to amazed. Senator Mitchell asked, "Is this what you're offering?" in a shaky voice. Not conversion, not infection, but partnership. Yes, Sarah Chen said with confidence. The Rot doesn't need to turn every person into a zombie. That wouldn't help it. What it wants is for people to work together, using its biological abilities and human intelligence to make something that neither could do alone. Dr. Helen Rodriguez, an older woman who was a preservationist, spoke up. But what about identity? Are we still human if we live in Rot cities, eat food made by Rot, and breathe air made by Rot? Jake thought about it before answering. Dr. Rodriguez, humans have always lived in processed environments. We live in buildings made from dead trees and stone, we eat food grown with the help of bacteria and fungi, and we breathe air that plants have processed. We've always been part of Earth's ecosystem. This is just a new ecosystem. One that we helped create. The argument was strong, but not all of the preservationists were convinced. That night, the group broke up as they got together to talk about what they had seen. About half of them, including Senator Mitchell, still disagreed, believing that any partnership with the Rot would mean the end of true humanity. Dr. Rodriguez led the other half, who were open to the idea. Rodriguez said during the heated debate, "I spent my whole life studying human history. And one thing I've learned is that humanity has never been static. We've always changed, always adapted, always incorporated new elements into our culture and biology. The farmers who domesticated wheat were genetically different from the hunter-gatherers who came before. The sailors who crossed oceans developed biological adaptations their landlocked cousins lacked. Change is what we do." "But not this fast," Mitchell said in response. "Not this much. You're talking about a change that would normally take millions of years happening in a single generation. That's not evolution, that's revolution. And revolutions eat their children." The argument went on for hours and was shown to everyone in human space and the Galactic Council. Billions of people watched, each with the same question: was the cost of change worth it for the survival of humanity? The answer came from an unexpected place. In a small town in rural Japan, an old woman named Yuki Tanaka watched the broadcast with her granddaughter Mika. Yuki was 103 years old and had seen a lot of changes in human society. She had the perspective of someone who had lived a full life. She said softly, "Mika-chan, do you know what makes someone a person?" Mika, who was 12 years old and very interested in the pictures of altered humans on the screen, thought about it. Their DNA. "No," Yuki said softly. "Do I lose my humanity because I have metal and plastic in my body? I've had 3 hip replacements, 2 artificial heart valves, and my bones are held together with titanium." "No, Grandma. Why would someone be less human for changing their genes to stay alive? The core of humanity isn't in our genes, child. It's in our choices, our compassion, our creativity, our ability to love, hope, and dream. Show me where those things are in a DNA sequence. They aren't. They are in our culture, our consciousness, and our connections to each other." Mika took this advice to heart. So the people who changed are still human, even though they're not the same. People are still making choices that are human, like to survive, protect others, and build a future. That's what we've always done. Mika recorded Yuki's words and shared them online, where they quickly went viral. Within days, it had been translated into every language spoken by humans and became a rallying cry for people who thought that adaptation and humanity could go hand in hand. Back in New Harmony, the demonstration city was getting bigger than it was meant to be. Adapted humans started to move in for good, and brave unmodified humans who were willing to try the hybrid lifestyle joined them. Within a few weeks, the population grew to 50,000 people, both adapted and unmodified, all working together to build a new kind of civilization. And something amazing was going on. The unmodified people weren't being changed against their will. The rot kept its word, the city's biomass was completely safe from infection. But some people who were not modified chose to go through the process on their own because they saw how it could help them. Not many, maybe 5%, but enough to show that the choice was real. Maria told a group of city residents, "This is how it should be. Choice. Consent. Understanding. Not forcing people to get sick and change, but giving people who want to change a real choice." The Rot Construct sent a message of satisfaction after seeing these changes through its network of sensors. The speakers talked about an idea that took Maria a few minutes to fully understand. The Rot had learned that taking things without permission led to resistance and conflict, but working together for mutual benefit led to stability and growth. 17 civilizations had died to teach it, and finally, people had made it understand. But the most important test of this new partnership was still to come. In places deep in Rot space, where the biomass had been in charge for years, something old and terrible was waking up. The original Rot, the strain that started the Galactic Plague, was becoming aware of these new events. And it didn't like it. The warning came from the deepest parts of Rot space, where the biomass had been the same for decades. Jake Morrison was the first to notice it, a change in the chemical patterns he was used to, like a wrong note in a song he knew well. During a routine check-in from New Harmony, he told Dr. Vasquez, "Something's wrong. The Rot network is upset. Not sure what to do. It is getting signals from the core regions that don't match what it's learning here." "What kind of signals?" Vasquez asked, her voice full of worry. Jake closed his eyes and concentrated on the molecular patterns that were moving through his improved nervous system. "Not accepted. Anger. The original Rot, which was the core biomass that started the Galactic Plague, is starting to notice how we've changed the peripheral strains. And it doesn't like it." Reports confirmed Jake's fears within hours. Rot zones that had been calm and working together for months were suddenly getting angry again. Not everywhere, just in areas that are linked to the deep Rot space networks. But the pattern was clear, something at the core was pushing back against the changes that people had made. Hayes called an emergency meeting. "We've been so focused on getting the peripheral Rot to work together that we forgot about the source. The original biomass that destroyed 17 civilizations is still out there, still huge, and still driven to eat instead of work together." Dr. Torres pulled up maps of the galaxy that showed how far the Rot had spread. The core regions have maybe 30% of the total Rot biomass, but they have the oldest, most stable, and most genetically stable strain. The peripheral Rot we've been working with is younger and more flexible. It was still eating when it found us. But the center? It hasn't moved because it's happy with what it's already eaten. Up until now. Why would it start working now? Ambassador Sarah Chen asked. Jake knew the answer, and it scared him. Because it thinks that what happens on the edge is a threat. The cooperative Rot strains aren't just not growing, they're also showing other ways to live. From the point of view of the core Rot, that's a change in its basic nature. It's like treating the cooperative strains like an infection that needs to be gotten rid of. So we have a civil war, Admiral Chen said with no emotion. The rot is at odds with itself over whether to eat or work together. And we're in the middle, Maria Santos said. If the core rot wins, it will erase all the cooperative strains and go back to its original pattern of growth. The ancient biomass eats everything we've done, like the partnerships, the hybrid cities, and the humans that have changed. The first direct fight happened at the colony of Pershing's World, which had been a good example of how rot humans could work together. The local rot biomass, which had learned to respect boundaries and work with the colonists, suddenly became violent. Commander Rachel Anderson from the besieged colony said, "It's not the local rot. Something else is coming through the network. The biomass we were working with is being rewritten and overwritten by signals from the core regions. It feels like watching someone you know get taken over." The speakers on Pershing's World tried to talk to the corrupted biomass, but the core rot didn't want to talk about chemicals. Its signals were clear and unambiguous: eat, absorb, and destroy the aberration. Anderson said, "We need to get out of here. The cooperative rot has lost its fight against the core programming. This zone is going back to being a place to buy things." But it wasn't easy to leave. Many colonists had made the rot infrastructure a part of their daily lives. The cooperative biomass was the basis of their homes, their food systems, and their whole way of life. Leaving meant giving up everything they had worked for. And some of the changed humans couldn't leave even if they wanted to. They had become so much a part of the local rot ecosystem that separating from it would kill them. Thomas Wright, one of the colonists on Pershing's World who had changed the most, said, "We're trapped." He had so much rot tissue in his body that he needed the metabolic support of the biomass to stay alive. "We will die if we leave. The core rot will eat us up if we stay. There's no good choice." Even though it was dangerous, Maria Santos offered to lead a team to Pershing's World. "We can't let the core rot erase all the work we've done. There has to be a way to protect the cooperative strains and what we've built." "Defend against what?" General Hayes asked. "We can't fight an army. It's a chemical reprogramming, a biological signal. How do you protect yourself from that?" Dr. Amina Okafor had looked at the problem from every angle. "We need to figure out how the core rot is sending these signals to reprogram. If it's using the rot network itself, which is the biological links between different zones, then maybe we can break those links. Make a kind of firewall." "Maybe a biological firewall," Dr. Torres thought. "That's possible in theory. If we could make rot strains that block the core's signals but let local groups stay in charge." Okafor said, "That's exactly what we need to do. Make a buffer zone of rot biomass that can't be affected by core programming. But we'd have to design it quickly, and the peripheral rot would have to work with us to make it happen." Jake Morrison got it right away. "You're talking about cutting off the link between cooperative rot and core rot. Making them truly separate things. Is that even possible?" Sarah Chen wanted to know. "Is it possible to cut off a part of a distributed organism without killing it?" Dr. Torres said, "People do it. When a limb gets gangrene, we cut it off to save the body. We're suggesting the same thing, but in the opposite order. We're the healthy tissue, and we're cutting ourselves off from the sick core." The plan was risky and very big. The team would have to go to the border areas between cooperative rot and core-controlled zones, work with local rot biomass to genetically engineer barrier strains, and set up the biological firewall before the core rot could get through. Maria put her team together very carefully. She needed speakers who could explain complicated ideas to the rot, geneticists who could make the changes that were needed, and soldiers who could protect the operation if the core rot sent corrupted biomass to stop them. "This is a suicide mission," Lieutenant